Welcome to class, students. Salwete discipuli. In this lesson on relative pronouns, we will be learning about what the purpose or use of relative pronouns is in sentences. We will be looking primarily at examples in English. We already know what the relative pronouns are in both Latin and English, qui, quae, quod, and all of its forms in Latin, and the words who, whose, whom, and which in English. But what does it mean to be a relative pronoun? Well, relative is something that relates one idea or description to another word in the main idea. Relative means that ideas are connected to one another. So let's look at some relative pronouns in action and see how they relate or connect to ideas. We have two sentences in English. I found the lost dog, and I returned the lost dog to its owner. Writing them like this is a very simplistic way of communicating the ideas, so how can we connect or relate them? Look at what I've come up with. I've returned the lost dog, which I found, to the owner. The relative pronoun which connects the idea of my finding the dog to the more important idea that I returned it to its owner. Now let's take a look at this example. My two sentences are, I like the shirt, and the shirt is blue. It's obvious that the two ideas communicated in these sentences are related to one another. So how can I connect them? By using a relative pronoun, of course. I decide that my main idea is that I like the shirt, and I want to describe for you which shirt I like. So I take the second sentence and turn it into a relative clause beginning with which to create the sentence, I like the shirt, which is blue. Let's see how we use a relative pronoun to connect these two ideas. My friend's dad is in the Army. He is coming home on Friday. So I want to focus on the idea that my friend's dad is coming home on Friday because I think that's the most important idea. That means I'm going to take the remaining part of the sentences, the fact that my friend's dad is in the Army, and use that as the relative clause. This is what it will sound like. My friend's dad, who is in the Army, is coming home on Friday. So I've used the relative clause to join together these two simple ideas to make one more complex idea. Relative clauses help your writing sound more mature and complex. That is a good thing. Let's take a look at how the relative pronoun is used in this example to join together two simple ideas about two facts about my brother. One is that he has two children, and the other fact is the names of the children. Notice that I'm using the relative pronoun whose to talk about the children, because in the second sentence I am communicating the names of the children. So that's why I'm using whose. It shows possession, and I want you to know what the children's names are. Because it's not the most important idea in my sentence, the important idea is that my brother has two children, I'm including it in the relative clause. But the ideas are definitely related to one another. Let's look at one final example together. The sentences in the original forms are I gave money to the man, and the man was very poor. I'm going to focus on the fact that the man is very poor, and then I'm going to connect the idea that I gave money to him as the relative clause. Notice that I use the dative form of the relative pronoun to whom, because the man is receiving something. I create a new sentence that says, the man to whom I gave the money was very poor. This doesn't have to be the only way to connect these ideas. I could say, I gave money to the man who was very poor. That will also be an acceptable combination. The difference is that I'm focusing on the fact that I gave money to a man and not on the man himself. So that's a little stylistic thing to think about when you are using relative pronouns and clauses. The idea that's expressed in the word that comes after who, whose, or whom, or which is not the focus of the idea. It's not the main idea that you want to get across, but a secondary idea. So there's a lot to think about when you are using relative clauses in your own writing. Now it's your turn to practice. Take the two sentences that are written in English and combine or relate them to one another using a relative pronoun and a relative clause. Remember that you must maintain the meaning of both ideas to have the sentence be correct. Let's see if you came up with a sentence similar to mine. I said, Remus is the brother of Romulus who founded Rome. I think you could also say Romulus, whose brother is Remus, founded Rome. Now let's try combining these two simple sentences into one more complex one by using a relative pronoun. I believe that the most effective way to combine these sentences is to say Aeneas, who is a Trojan, fought in the Trojan War. Let's see what combination you'll come up with for these two sentences. There might be several, but remember that you need to think about which combination communicates the same ideas and also sounds the least awkward or the most effective. Let's see what you can do. In my opinion, the most effective and efficient way to combine these sentences and communicate the correct idea is this. Aeneas worshipped and praised the gods who loved him. I could combine them by saying, Aeneas, whom the gods loved, worshipped and praised them. But I don't think that that makes a lot of sense. And when I write sentences and communicate ideas, I want my thoughts to be understood. So that's why I think the first choice, Aeneas worshipped and praised the gods who loved him, is the most appropriate way to combine the sentences. Here's a real challenge. Here we have 3 sentences, and our task is to combine or connect all 3 sentences using probably 2 different relative clauses. What will you come up with? This sentence was definitely challenging. I have 2 choices. Here is my first one. The Greeks built a wooden horse in which they hid many soldiers and with which they defeated the Trojans. That's my first version, and I like the sound of that pretty much. But then I thought, what would happen if I started the sentence with like this? The Greeks defeated the Trojans. How will I work in the other two? This is how I did it. The Greeks defeated the Trojans with the wooden horse which they had built, and in which they had hidden many soldiers. Both, I think, are acceptable combinations of those three sentences. These final two sentences, which we are challenging ourselves to combine by using a relative pronoun and a relative clause, describe a very famous scene from Rome's history. Aeneas's father Anchises was lame. Aeneas carried his father out of the burning city of Troy. What will your combination look like for these sentences? Here is my combination of the two sentences. Aeneas carried his father Anchises, who was lame, out of the burning city of Troy. I think that is the most straightforward and effective way to combine these sentences while communicating in an effective manner the same ideas expressed by the two individual ones. Now we'll move on and take a look at how we decide whether we should use who, whose, whom, or which.